Good evening, and welcome to this live broadcast. My name is Emmanuel Yegon from Mobile Journalism Africa, and this evening we are privileged to have with us the first African Union Youth Envoy, Miss Aya Chebbi. We have a couple of questions for her, and if you have any other questions, kindly that you would wish to ask or that you want her to address, issues that you would like that she addresses, then feel free to just, type in that in the comment section, and we'll be able um, to address those ones as well. So, inviting her right now to the broadcast so that we can start this off. Seeing a couple of guys have joined. Also, let us know where you're watching this from, by the way, and also invite your friends to this interview, because there are a lot of things that are going to be spoken about here today that concern the youth in Africa, all over basically. So, good evening, Miss Chebbi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
How is Addis?
Addis is calm. It's a beautiful day today. It's sunny, and yeah. But in terms of containing the virus, it's quite calm, and the government has been putting a lot of measures in place.
Okay, so you're also working from home or just working indoors? I want to believe so.
Yes, I'm working from home. Yeah.
All right, interesting. So we'll just uh, give our audience a minute or so, so we just have more people joining. I'm seeing people watching from Egypt, South Africa, Ethiopia, Ghana, and while they continue to join that way, probably just give you an overview of what we are going to cover today. So, the issues concerning the coronavirus pandemic in the continent and how we are responding, what we should be doing as the youth in Africa in response to the pandemic, and then as well just trying to talk about the role of your office in all this, and what your office is going to talk about, what your office is telling the youth. For instance, what is it that you want the youth to do? What is it that the youth can do in terms of just flattening the curve and reducing the spread of the pandemic? And then again, we'll talk about the development in Africa and the place of the youth in development, in line also with the different plans that we have. So we have Africa's Agenda 2063. We have what you've been launching, so including the African Youth Charter Hustlers Initiative, what that is about. And then again, just knowing how we are connecting the youth to the African Union, or let's say just trying to bring the African Union closer to the people, and most especially the youth, who are the people you represent at the African Union. I hope that is okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so we are having more people from Zambia, from South Africa. For those who are joining us, we are talking with Ms. Aya Chebbi, the first African Union Youth Envoy, and we are going to have an interesting conversation today. If you have anything you would want her to address, remember to just include it there in the comment section. We have guys from Nigeria who are coming in, so I think we can just start, Ms. Chebbi. So for the people who do not know who Aya Chebbi is, kindly just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and the work that you do.
I'm Aya Chebbi. I am originally from Tunisia. I'm a Pan-African feminist, and I serve now the African Union as the envoy on youth. And so my mandate is for 2 years with the chairperson of the Union Commission. until 2021, the summit. And my mission basically is to advocate for the youth agenda at the African Union and to member states.
Okay. Then again, you've mentioned the fact that you are the African Union Youth Envoy. So tell us a little bit about the office and your mandate, because a lot of the youth, and even when we were just preparing for this, a lot of people ask, so what is the office of the Youth Envoy? What does it do? And for just clearing doubt on what the office does and what the office is about, just give us a little brief about what you do as the Youth Envoy.
Yeah, so the envoy, the role of envoy is an appointment. So I was appointed by the chairperson of the African Union. I think sometimes just learning from young people expectation from this role, sometimes it's good to say what I am not, to understand what I can also do in my role. So I'm not elected. I don't represent my government. I don't represent any constituency at the union. I am just appointed in my own capacity as a Pan-African youth advocate. I was selected among more than 700 applications from across the continent, and then went through a rigorous selection process, a panel of 14 representatives from different departments and regional economic communities. So it was a really transparent and rigorous process. And then the chairperson has chosen by merit. So I scored the top, and that's how I was appointed. And then in terms of my role, there is also an expectation that my office does programming or implement projects or do things on the ground, but that's not my role. I'm a political appointee, so my role is advocacy. And basically, when I started, the first thing I did is I started a feedback form that was distributed and shared with young people to tell us what they think we should be doing, and because it's a new office as well, we're setting the foundation. So after those feedback, we worked on a work plan, and we put it back to young people and said, is this what you are expecting? And then in a process of 6 months of consultation, both online, more than 1,000 submission, and offline during several workshops, we came up with an action plan. So if you go to ayouth-envoy.org, you will find a 2019-2020 action plan, which focuses on a lot of the issues that young people care about, but it is advocacy. So I work a lot on advocating to member states, to governments, to ministers, to heads of states, on what young people really needs are. And even when we do missions on the ground, we meet a lot of young people. We listen to them in youth town halls and meetings and roundtables. And then we organize also a lot of intergenerational dialogue, because I see my role also.
I think we have an internet issue, but she should be back in a bit. So for those of you who are joining us at the moment, we are talking to the first African Union Youth Envoy, Ms. Aya Chebbi. So keep joining in. So just a bit, I'll try to add her back into the conversation. Really sorry for that. Just a bit of that. We have some technical problems, but I'm sure we should be able to reconnect. So in a minute she will be back to the conversation. Hi, Aya.
Hi,
sorry
I'm not
for
sure
that.
if it was from my end or from your end.
Yeah, we lost you for a bit there.
Okay. Yeah, it should be my internet. So I was saying that the bridging or building that trust between institution and government has been very visible now during coronavirus outbreak, because many young people are not collaborating with government measures because of that distrust is essentially and initially between government institutions and youth. And so that's also also part of the work of my office, where we organize a lot of intergenerational dialogue and advocate a lot for intergenerational co-leadership, and really advocate decision makers to have youth at the table, not just to tick a box, but to actually listen to their needs and co-design with them the solutions. So in a nutshell, this is my role is it's advocacy, and it's trying to bring more youth voices to policy spaces and decision-making spaces.
Okay, I like the bit that you've talked about, that intergenerational dialogue. I don't know how much of that is happening at the moment when we have this pandemic, and is it effective? Is it bearing fruits? Because I'll just use an example of, we've seen in different countries across the continent, where while governments are issuing regulations on what to do and directives that, stay at home, do not do this, we are still seeing cases of people hanging out as if coronavirus is just a common flu. So I don't know, is it working from where you sit?
Yeah, I mean, our role now is to listen to what young people challenges are during coronavirus outbreak, and what they are doing on the ground, and what they think is working effectively, and try to feed it in with what Africa CDC is doing, which is the main institution or arm of the African Union to fight the pandemic. It's the Africa Centers for Disease Prevention and Control. So we played that bridge between what's happening on the ground. We did a lot of consultation, and we listened to a lot of youth, and then we feedback that into what Africa CDC, and Africa CDC also has convened many health ministers. I think more than 30 showed up in February, early in the outbreak in Africa. We had just few cases in South Africa and Senegal, and Africa CDC convened health ministers. They adopted a joint continental strategy and an Africa task force on coronavirus. And that task force is at member state level. So whatever we do, or we work with young people, we try to bring that to that policy space. Now, on the national level, I would say there is more challenge in there, because I think our government should remember that there are many young professionals who could be on the front line of this fight, as young scientists, young health workers, young even eye-tech gurus, because now
Yes.
we need a lot of work on communication, and what best time than bring all the creativity and innovation of young people to the front, have young advisors, have youth with the Ministry of Communication, the Ministry of Health, and different ministries that are working together to combat the virus. So I think that's where probably at the national level we need to push more and advocate more for member states to engage young people in the leadership of combating the violence, instead of just expecting youth who are already volunteering, in civil society organization and doing a lot actually on the ground, whether going door to door, doing sensitization or raising awareness, whether producing hand sensitizers, whether creating their own websites and trying to simplify information and doing campaigns. So I think what governments can do in the spirit of co-leadership is to bring all these young people who are innovators into the national plan of combating the disease.
Okay. I think someone is asking whether your post is remote, and please explain the volunteer opportunity for the AU Youth Corps. I don't know, maybe at the moment you can comment about whether your post is remote. I don't know what they meant by that. But if you can respond to that, then I would want to know from CDC, yeah? So Africa CDC, what is it that they are doing in terms of testing? In terms of
2
testing.
months ago, just recently. But before
Bring
that,
that again, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I wanted you to just start that point over again, yeah?
Yeah, so to respond to the first question, I think what they meant remotely, where I am based, I am now based in Addis Ababa since 2 months now, but before that, I used to be based in Tunis. But now I am here in Addis, working here. So in terms of what Africa CDC is doing, so there are different things that started actually from February. One of them is the health ministers meeting, emergency meeting, the joint strategy, the task force put in place. But then there was a lot of training and capacity support for member states, whether a network, they put together a network of clinicians. They are training member states in actually more than 40 countries in prevention and in risk communication and in measurements that are needed, especially for detection of the virus. In terms of the test kits, they distribute 1,000 test kit to any member states, especially the beginning of the outbreak, to any member state that needs the test kits. But now we need more, and we need a lot of donations. So there was Jack Ma and Alibaba Group donation that Prime Minister of Ethiopia distributed evenly to all member states. So about 20,000 test kits for each member state, and tons of equipment, protective equipment and gears. Yesterday, the African Union also, with Africa CDC, launched the Africa COVID-19 Fund. And now initially fundraising for about 150 million US dollars, and aiming to reach 400 million US dollars to put together resources for the response, which I think it's important, because I think in Africa, this is an initiative that only happens in the African Union, right? Because I know that many young people reach out and say, what is the AU is doing? You know, what's the AU response? What's the AU initiative? But I think we need to actually go to the AU website and look at all the initiatives that the AU is taking, which shows a lot of African solidarity. We're coming together. We have a comprehensive continental strategy. We have a fund that is an Africa fund, which we don't see in other regions. So I think from the response of the African Union and heads of states coming together to fight this pandemic, I think it's commendable. Of course, we need more. We need a lot of more fundraising. We need more detection and control and more capacity support for member states. But at least we are in a good direction.
Talking about that, and I think in terms of just coming together, we as Africa are good at that, like coming together, especially at a time of crisis, to work together towards a solution, and that is commendable. Now, talking about Africa in that sense, there was this, I think a week or two ago, so we had these doctors who are saying that tests should be done, vaccine tests should be done here in Africa. I know you did a response online about that. I don't know what's your take on that. If you could just if we could talk about that a little bit here as well.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, I responded immediately when I heard of it. I was actually offline for 2 days, and then I came in and I saw that. And of course, when we see things like that go viral with a lot of reactions, first thing I think I would recommend to anyone watching us to go and watch the whole interview in a context, so we don't take things out of their context.
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I was just taking down another question I've seen here. So
yeah, because I saw you frozen a bit. I was like, I hope I'm not talking to myself.
No, we are good. I was just.
So I think the first thing is to watch the whole thing and put things in context, because they were talking about the BCG vaccine, which is the tuberculosis vaccine. But that doesn't deny the fact that the tone of the conversation and the whole content of the conversation it doesn't come from any scientific analysis, but it comes from a very colonial and racist logic. So for me, I think it's really important that when things like this happen, that we come out and say and condemn positions like this or statements like this that shows racism and inequality, and shows that in times of when we need solidarity and unity, people like these two professors show us that the world is still with a lot of colonial legacy and baggage and a lot of inequality that we need to deal with. And so for me, it was really unacceptable to hear something like this, especially in times of solidarity. But it is unacceptable at all to think of Africa as Africans as test subjects, or think of us as a laboratory ground. I'm happy the World Health Organization came out and said that things will follow protocol and will follow ethical arrangements of how these vaccines are arranged and how they will be conducted. So I think that's our stand, is to just follow the protocol, but also really stop and end racist colonial statements like this.
That's in order. I couldn't agree with you more. So we have another question. How fast growing is the fund, and do we know what its priorities will be? I think it's about the fund that you mentioned. If you could comment on that.
Yeah, so the Bureau of the Assembly, which is headed by the African Union Chair, the President of South Africa, convened, the Bureau has 5 heads of states. So they convened actually twice the past week, and they put together this fund. And now the Afro Champions Initiative also came on board as a public-private partnership. And the idea of the fund to be Pan-African, self-reliant fund to mobilize the African private sector. And I think, yeah, there are a couple of millions already that have been resourced, but the aim is to fasten the fundraising, bringing together all the African private and public actors to come together and have a functional fund. But I just want to also mention that many countries have announced a lot of emergency funds. I think South Africa announced more than $50 million fund, which doesn't only tackle COVID-19, but also deal with small businesses and the economic impact of the coronavirus. Cote d'Ivoire did the same, announced, Ghana also announced an emergency fund, Equatorial Guinea announced an emergency fund. So there are national funds that have been put in place as well by governments to fasten the response and prevention. But I think just the continental one is also important for African solidarity and African self-reliance. So we're also not dependent on other funds.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Nessa is asking, when you say young people should be at the front line championing interventions to end COVID-19, we see more AYP taking advantage of social media. How best can the government harness that positively? And maybe even while you respond to that, it will lead us to the next question that I had on the position or the place of the youth, in just flattening the curve in the continent. So maybe we can start with that, with what Nessa has asked.
Mm-hmm.
How best,
Mm-hmm. So we've been convening, my office have been convening the virtual AU Youth consultation series on COVID-19 for a collective youth response. And we convened so far 10 consultations with 150 youth from 40 countries, so 20 to 25 per group. And this is from the youth themselves who are already on the front line. This is the kind of things that they say they want to do, and they want to be central to the response. And I think what we came up with is 3 phases of youth intervention. One is the preventive phase, which needs a lot of communication and which young people master the most, because we're better positioned to talk to our peers. You know, we are more trustworthy to our peers and some of the communities. We're better positioned to mobilize, for example, the creatives community. We know that in Ebola outbreak, arts and songs and musicians played a key role in getting the message across. We can also mobilize other trusted messengers like religious leaders, chiefs, traditional leaders, who the community trusts, and their word is very much respected and very much credible. So there is a communication aspect in the preventive phase that young people can play a central role in. Using social media, of course, making all of this information visual, directing people towards the right information, the right sources. And I would recommend Africa CDC and the World Health Organization as the main source for credibility. And then, of course, young people can play a role in volunteering to do door-to-door raising awareness, whether distributing masks, raising awareness about the information, doing a food package. This has been already happening. Young people have been already doing it. We just need a massive mobilization where youth can all come together in one comprehensive action to see
Yeah.
the impact of all of these, because this is really individual initiatives or organizations that are trying to make it. And then we have the second phase, which is the affected community, and we really need to emphasize that the affected community is the most vulnerable, is the people in informal settlements, people in refugee camp, the prisoners, the people with different abilities, you know, people who are already affected, even people who have affected by other diseases like HIV/AIDS or cancer, or you know, the most vulnerable. This is what we mean by the most vulnerable, the elderly
Yeah.
as well. And so young people play a major and central role in supporting the affected communities and making sure that these kind of support from government and measures of prevention reach those communities. And the last phase, I would say, is the post. I think
Sorry.
you lost me. Yes.
Yes, yes, I lost you a bit.
Yeah, so the third phase is the post-COVID-19 respond or needs. We cannot just talk about now and responding. We will have a lot of consequences from what's happening now, which will be especially economic and will affect the institution. I mean, what we want and need now is to reform the health infrastructure system, and to reform a lot of our institutions who are not delivering for our citizens. So that's why we launched, for example, just I think 10 days ago, a few days ago, the African Youth Charter Hustlers. And basically these are young people who will advocate to reform the healthcare system based on the African Youth Charter, which guarantees the rights of young people to have adequate healthcare. And so the policy level is very important to continue to advocate for transformation after the crisis, and not just
Yes.
you know, what's happening now. We need definitely to come out of this with better service delivery as governments.
Yeah, I think it is good that we actually like have a plan of whatever, like from whatever we can do right now and what we can do after the crisis. And maybe you can just respond to one more question from Nessa. She's saying, is it possible that you share the 3 methodologies you came up with, if it is a document? I don't know if that can be found on the website, or yeah, if you could respond to that as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you could go to auyouth.org and you will find a section on COVID-19. You will find all the consultations. We publish the reports there, and we will also publish a comprehensive report. And you can also sign up to get engaged. You can host or participate in a consultation as well.
Maybe, Aya, I don't know if you can talk more about the program, that initiative on the African Youth Charter, the Hustlers Initiative, yeah? So
Yeah.
what is it about? What do you aim to achieve? So that more people can get to know the initiatives that are run by the Office of the Youth Envoy and be able to participate, so that we are not seeing a disconnect between the office and the people that it is representing, if I may say that.
Mm-hmm. So the African Youth Charter Hustler Initiative just opened application a few days ago. So the deadline is until 20th of April, and you can apply if you are come from any of the 55 member states. Basically, it would be a program for 2 years where young people will be trained in advocacy in their regions, and they will be advocating to either ratify if the charter is not ratified in the country, and implement the charter if, for example, there is no National Youth Council or there is no youth fund. So the charter has a lot of measures of how to advocate for the youth agenda, and also to monitor and report, because we're having challenges with the monitoring and evaluation of the charter implementation. So these hustlers as well will help us for the accountability. It's really basically a youth-led accountability initiative where young people work and advocate to governments, but also hold governments accountable who ratified and signed up to implement this charter, which for all of the people who are watching us, it's one of the most progressive and inspiring documents that have been there on young people. It was adopted in 2006, and it was developed and written by young people as well
Yes.
from previous generations. So we need to be all proud of this charter, and this is an initiative from my office just to also make sure that every young person on the continent knows that we have this charter, and that we need to be the ones knowing our rights and advocating for them to be guaranteed.
Yeah, I think there was a question that had been asked previously. Maybe you can just speak to that right now about the AU Youth Corps, and then we'll go to another question from Cliff or someone like that. She's saying, what's your view on specific nationalities, individuals or religions or other minority groups being blamed for spreading COVID-19? So youth corps first, and then this one on individual or groups that are being blamed.
Mm-hmm. So the African Union Youth Volunteer Corps is a program of the African Union that deploys about 100 young people to the African Union here in Addis Ababa and to different AU organs or offices around the continent. And so these young people usually are first trained. There is a training, and then they are deployed for 1 year. So I encourage you all to apply when the application is open, and it's a physical, so you have to move, to take a year off and move to one of the member states to volunteer. For the question on basically it's stigmatization, right? So we're stigmatizing, just like some people who come up with all these names for the virus, attaching it, label it to a nationality, or to a certain group of people. I think this is dangerous, not only for a pandemic, for anything that happens. It doesn't really have, when we say terrorism, and we relate it to certain religion. So anything that happens, it's just if it's the pandemic, it has actually no nationality and no religion and no face and no language. It's just a pandemic that affects all of us, and if not all of us are safe, none of us will be safe. So even if we save one country, or country decides, I'm gonna get the funds for myself, secure myself, protect my citizens, if one single person in another country has the pandemic, it will not solve the issue. So this is really shows how global we are as humanity, how our issues are interconnected, and how we need to work as one and not as individual tiny countries. But I think also for other issues like terrorism, or like other issues where people related to a specific religion, or or issues that is related to certain gender, I think we need to just get our minds more open, that if the action of a smaller group of people doesn't define one's religion or one's ethnicity or one's gender. So we need to be really walk away from stigmatization, stop and end stigmatization, and really treat each other as human beings, because this is the time that showed that all of us are equal and all of us can be affected. It doesn't matter our class, it doesn't matter where we come from as a nationality. It's the only difference is that more people are affected than others because they are more vulnerable, and that needs attention.
Sure. And related to that also, we have been seeing cases of violence. For instance, we have cases of even domestic violence in that regard. And other people have been, for instance, stoned to death in some parts of the continent because they were suspected to have the virus, and they're intermingling with people. And also link that to the question that Footprints for Change here in Kenya, I think, have asked, that in regards to recent corona-related violence and crime in poor communities mostly, what can we do as young people for peace during this time? We have had cases of police brutality and looting, etc. And really, that case, especially on police brutality, when governments are instituting measures to contain the spread, and yet we see the same government through the police beating up people, brutalizing people. Some have lost their lives during this period. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for this question. I think it's really important for young peace builders to play a central role in the pandemic, because the pandemic is not only a health crisis, it touches upon all, sectors of society, whether political, economic, security, social, mental health. Everything is touched. So young peace builders have a really central role, and I hope to see more and more young peace builders doing initiatives and more vocal, because we don't just need a health response, we need a multi-sectorial response. In terms of government measures recurring to violence, of course that's not acceptable, and governments need to understand that violence only breeds violence. It's not gonna help us contain the pandemic. The measures that we need to be taking as governments is to contain the pandemics in collaboration with citizens. And so I definitely advocate for governments to build trust with citizens and to leverage on the youth constituency to do exactly that, because the majority of their population is more than 50% young people. If they get those 50% on their side, if they get the trust of those 50%, they can take care of the rest of the population. So I think governments should be just more strategic, smarter, and resort more to collaboration and partnership and co-leadership rather than violence.
That's amazing. That's an amazing response, and we are hoping to see that moving forward, even as we try to contain the spread of the virus. Now, to just looking at what you've been doing, and as the first AU Youth Envoy, there must be a lot of things that you and your team, of course, still trying to figure out, if I may say so, even as we are heading to, is it the final year of your term?
Yes.
Yeah, so I know there are a lot of things, and probably whoever will check that post next will have a lot of things figured out already because of the work that you and your team are putting it. How is that for you? The fact that you are supposed now to provide guidance at an individual level, how is that for you?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important of my appointment is to leave a legacy and to leave at least the foundation. We might not have been able to do a lot of the initiatives that we wanted to do, especially with the disruption of the pandemic this year, because we were very much focused on silencing the guns campaign, and you are part of our workshop. And so we had a whole lot of plan for going to 6 countries and training young people and organizing intergenerational dialogues and all that. But I think more importantly than that is the legacy that we will leave, which is now, after a year and a half at least, we have an office of the Youth Envoy at the African Union, which didn't exist before. At least we have an action plan that sets the direction for the office of the Youth Envoy. At least we've been able to bring young people closer.
Yes, I think that, yes,
and the
yes,
African
just.
Union closer to young people. And I think also one of the things that we wanted to also leave as a legacy is to bring the AU to the grassroots. And we tried throughout our missions last year to different countries and member states to really go to the community and meet with young people. And in many, of those meetings, people would tell me, you're the first ever person I met from the AU. I don't know what's the AU. I don't know, what someone from the AU would look like and would speak like. And so that's, for me, it's a good foundation to say, yes, the AU has also this face, who is young, who is female, who is cool, and who is not here to speak complicated language, but just to listen and to bring your voices to the highest level of decision making. So I hope we have been able to do that, and we will continue to do that until the end of our mission.
And I think Aya, related to that also, Ife Agbola has asked, how can young people leading movements or non-profits in Africa get closer to the office of the Youth Envoy outside the programs or the workshops? And I think that is just part of what we were talking about even last year when we were trying to build up the work plan, yeah? That how are we bringing the office closer to the youth, and also bringing Africa Union closer to the people, so that we are not just saying the African Union is this big body that we cannot access, yeah? So maybe you can also just add a little on that.
Yeah, so definitely, if you are part of a youth movement or a youth organization, we have on our website always a feedback form that you can fill. We opened it since March last year, and we'll continue to receive feedback from all youth organizations who reach out, who want to organize things, who send us proposal, who send us letters. We try to be as responsive as possible, and where there is an opportunity that arises, we share. So you become part of the mailing list, and then whenever you pick up an interest on. And so now, for example, for COVID-19 response, go to the website, check out the virtual consultation, fill out the form, and then we get what you are sending us, whether what you are doing, you need support, you need collaboration, you need to get in touch even at any of the departments of the union, because we also try to be a link to different departments, and you know, link young people with the different issues. We have Department of Peace and Security, we have agriculture, we have gender. So there are different things. Youth is cutting across all these issues, but it's important that also we connect the union and these different departments and the technical people who work in this department with more and more youth networks. I think that's what we bring to the union, is that we bring a wider, diverse range of different youth actors to work with them, to participate in their activities and programs. So please do reach out.
Okay, yeah, and I think the website is a very good resource because there are a lot of things that are put up there. And so if you need to get any information on any programs or plans that the African Union has, and even the Office of the Youth Envoy, then you can just go to the website and have a look at that. For those who are joining us, we are talking to Ms. Aya Chebbi, the African Union Youth Envoy. Keep those questions coming. I can see most of you, some are still joining, and there are a lot of questions as well that are coming in. Aya, Footprints for Change is saying, thank you for the response. We join you in calling young people, young peace builders to action for peace and security during these difficult times. Vijana na Amani, changing generations. Someone else is asking, how do we start up social enterprise without source of funding? Chubby Francesca, yeah. So I don't know if you want to respond to that. I think
I wish I can. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I think you should start somewhere. What I know is that you should follow your dreams and believe in yourself and start somewhere and knock all the doors, whether it's loans, banks, partners, institution, your family, get the support you need. So my word would be of encouragement: go for it and never get anything on your way. You will overcome. Entrepreneurship is not an easy path, and just if you have an idea and you believe in it, go for it.
For sure. Now, Aya, a lot of young people are watching from across the continent, and even those who I've seen someone saying that African youth in diaspora are also following this. In light of the pandemic that we have at the moment, what is your message to the youth of Africa?
I think I want to say to African youth who are watching us that even though we are paying as a generation for the result of unsustainable systems that we did not design, that we didn't have a say, so we are really bearing the consequences of decisions that have been made for us. We need to step up to the challenge of the 21st century, to the challenge of 2020, and really show our youth leadership. And for us, but also for the next generations, because even if we feel failed by other generation, by our leaders, by decision makers, we cannot fail the next generation. And so let's not do the same mistake. Whatever you are contributing now, be part of the solution, because that will save the lives of many, many generations to come. That will transform the systems that is needed for other generations to live with dignity and justice. So I really call on all of you to be part of the solution, and for all of us as a generation to leave a footprint and to say that it is us who saved the humanity and the planet from this pandemic. So please join hands, all of us, in a collective African youth response to COVID-19.
That's profound, Aya. Someone is asking in this. I mean, in relation to that, Sishefora from the UK, she's asking, what can the diaspora do to help? So the youth in diaspora, those especially who are in the UK. Someone else is, I think Chubby, who had asked about entrepreneurship, is thanking you for the response. Marvin Gakunyi is saying we shall come out stronger as a country and continent at large. Athini is saying, Aya, are your other youth networks doing any groundwork separate from your office? I think that's a question that you might want to respond to. And then someone else, self-love is society, saying you are doing amazing and inspiring us. Keep on being yourself. I would love to feature you on my blog one day, Aya. Yes, and then there's another question. So I think you respond to that first, and then I'll read out the other question.
Okay, so many questions. Which one you want me to pick on?
Okay. The rest were, most of those ones that I've read are comments, but maybe one is, how can the youth in diaspora assist?
Okay, so who was asking from the diaspora?
Her name is Sishefora. I don't know if it's a he or a she, but yeah.
Okay, so he or she, our sisters and brothers in diaspora, firstly, especially she's from the UK, so we send you a lot of solidarity, because we know that Europe and the United States are now very much hit by the pandemic, and a lot of the rate of infected people and death is high there. So we also send you our solidarity, and we have a lot of Africans in the diaspora that we are worried as well about, and how to support them. But I think diaspora contribution to Africa, whether it's in the pandemic or in Africa's development in general, is really to fundraise, to contribute. The remittances from diaspora, we know, is triple the time from aid. So there is a lot of financial support and investment in Africa that diaspora needs to do. But I think also in terms of access to information and to the internet, you know that Africa is 70% offline. So we do a lot of social media campaigning and social media information, but honestly, it's only 30% of our population that gets that information.
Access,
so,
yeah.
So you in the diaspora have the opposite, you know, you have 80% of access to information. And so please help us also get out the Africa's narrative, because there is a narrative on the media now that you know, Africa is incapable to handle the crisis, you know, and it's a very neo-colonial idea of Africa always needing assistance from outside, you know. But so far we've been handling, and that's why I keep saying that the African Union is doing a lot, and I keep trying to inform young people, this is what our heads of state doing, this is what the union is doing, this is what the commission is doing, because it is showing a lot of solidarity compared to the rest of the world. And that narrative should be out, because African youth are on the front line, and they're doing hell of a lot of work on the ground, and they're innovating, and that story should be out. And so the story of Africa shouldn't always be either the sexy conflict war story, or because Africa doesn't have many cases, doesn't get the attention of the world. So help us in the diaspora to push for Africa's narrative.
I think I am totally impressed with what you've said, Aya, because the reason why we founded Mobile Journalism Africa is to help change how Africa's narrative is told. And right at this moment, that cannot be any true, because even right now we are looking for those stories of solutions, local solutions to this pandemic. So how young people are coming up with solutions to just cushion their communities from the effects of this global pandemic. So even in terms of storytelling, then I think in just getting out what the African Union is doing and what the stories from the communities, I think we are really, really ready to partner in that regard. Now, there's this other question of are your other youth networks doing any groundwork separate from your office?
What does it mean by youth networks? My youth networks?
Yes, I think the networks that you are close to, that is Athini, the Hufflepuff, who has asked that, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, since I have taken this post, I work with all the youth networks. I used to be the chair of Africa Youth Movement, but I stepped down the day I was appointed, and so the Africa Youth Movement has now two amazing co-chairs doing amazing things. I just read their newsletter the other day. It's amazing, fantastic work. But I think my role now is to try to bring all these networks together in one response, because each network, each movement has 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers, and it's important that we all come together in a coordinated effort. So I think that's the role I see myself. It's not to work in my network or in that network. It's really to bring all these networks and facilitate a platform of coordination for all of them to work together, facilitate conversations, support them in their youth-led solutions and actions. So during these virtual consultations we did with the African Women Leaders Network, Young Women Leaders Caucus, we did with Africa Youth Movement, we did with One Young Word, we did with East African Community Youth Ambassadors, we did with African Ambassadors for Peace, we did with My Lead Network, with GMAC Young Women Network. So it's a lot of range of actors, and we want to do more. We want more and more movements and networks to come on board and to activate their memberships, because these are not NGOs, these are not organizations, and it's deliberate that I do a lot of this work with networks and movements because they're not recognized as NGOs or organizations, and the African Union usually works with NGOs and organizations. So this is another voice also to bring, who have a very different way of working and a very radical, bold statements and voice. And we need that diversity with the national youth councils, with all the other structures. It is a time for us to come together, regardless of our structures, of our ideologies, of our affiliations. We all have one goal: to end this enemy, which is COVID-19. So we need to all come together in dialogue, in conversations, and speak to each other.
I think there's someone else from Agus of Africa. He's saying, how can our organization partner with the Office of the AU Youth Envoy to leverage on youth networks across the continent to drive the full ratification and implementation of the African Youth Policy? You had mentioned something like that previously, but if you want to add anything.
So two things: go to ayouth.envoy.org, the website. You will find feedback form to fill, or you will find volunteer form, and many opportunities for you to get in touch. And if none of them speak to you, just email the main email. And then the second thing, on the African Youth Charter, including African youth policies, youth funds, and so on, we have the African Youth Charter Hustlers initiatives that we opened application for, and so you can invite young people in your country to apply for it. We will select 2 per country, 1 young man and 1 young woman, to advocate for particularly what you are doing now, the youth policy to be adopted and implemented.
Okay, yeah. Now to a more personal question, Aya. We've talked about the process of being appointed to the post, of the African Youth Envoy, and it was highly competitive. And obviously, from the work that you had been doing before that, and then and everything that you've been doing, even right now as the Youth Envoy, even with these challenges that come up, and you need to be on the forefront in addressing them and championing for the needs of the young people in this continent, that you're championing for the space of young people to be heard, even in development, and any discourse related to the continent, so that we are not left out. What keeps you moving, Aya? What's your motivation?
My motivation, I'm a hardcore Pan-Africanist. I truly believe in Ubuntu. I think if we unite as a continent, we can overcome anything. I think the solution to all of our problems and challenges is Pan-Africanism, because the moment we can unite beyond our borders, the moment we become borderless, the moment we study in each other institution, we work in each other ministries, the moment we trade with each other, we are self-reliant, we build ourselves, we industrialize. The moment we are one, we can face any challenge in Africa. So, and why youth? Because we are the youngest population in the world and in the history of Africa. So if I say unite in a Pan-African ideology, it means unite youth. If I unite 60% of the population, then I can tomorrow, all of us start a political party, and all of us vote for it, and all of us run the country. So, we really have that demographic power. And so for me, that's what drives me, the belief that if we, all of us, work towards the ideology, the vision of Pan-Africanism and unite as African youth, we can really become the leading continent in the world, economically, socially, politically, the reform, the infrastructure. We're a rich continent. So I don't see any why we are not, we are still poor people, but rich continent. I don't see why. The only reason why we haven't been able to harness all our resources for the benefit of ourselves and our people is because we did not unite as Africans. We did not unite as a continent. We did not think of ourselves as one big continent and not just as tiny countries or communities or tribes or ethnic groups or religious groups. Or, the more we think smaller of our identity and belonging, the more divided we become. But the more we think broader and bigger of our identity as Pan-African, first and foremost, then we all win. So this is my belief. This is what keeps me driving. And until that dreams become true, I'll keep fighting for it.
I think we are together in that, in just, believing that together, if we come together as the youth, then we can really achieve more. Rashida is saying, dear Eva, we hope to see you in Tunisia. We would be happy to get inspired and share energy. She also asked the question about your motivation and who is. So question.
Yeah.
What keeps you forward? What keeps you going forward? I mean, what's your motivation plus what's your inspiration? Who is your inspiration is the question.
Okay, as people, there are many. As people, there are many. But I would I don't know if this audience would know. So I'll just bring an example that people might be first time they hear about it. So in Tunisia, we have Elisa. Elisa is the one who built Carthage. And so she's a female, she's a rebel. She rebelled from her tyrant brother who lived or ruled what's today Lebanon. And she moved on to Tunisia. That's during the Phoenician time. And then she built Carthage, and Carthage has become the crossroad of the Mediterranean, has opened trade, has really opened the whole region. And she inspires me because it's a female leadership, until today, when people find Elisa stuff, it's like her brush and, feminine things. And so for me, she's an inspiration of being radical and rebellious, which I believe I am. I have always been. Okay. She's someone who is leading with a female energy, which I really appreciate and admire, and I think we should value it as masculinity. But also, she's someone who chose to be open and to collaborate. And I think we need more of that in today's world. So she speaks to my vision also of unity and collaboration.
Okay. Anikana says, Aya, please put Equatorial Guinea in your agenda. I think you told us in Namibia you were scheduled to be here this year. I think he meant to say I'm an African from Equatorial Guinea. So there's that. And then Kasapo Manda says, thank you, always championing the core leadership agenda. I met you at the African Regional Forum for Sustainable Development in Zim. The intergenerational dialogue sparked a good conversation in Zambia. The lady from the UK saying, fantastic. I messaged you on LinkedIn about the interview for my online magazine to spread knowledge and narrative. Thanks. So there are a lot of people who are showing intent to collaborate. So they're saying appreciate the intent to collaborate. Well done, Ms. Chebbi. Another one is saying we have demographic power. Indeed, we do have demographic power. I think another one from Footprints for Change here in Kenya, Pan-Africanism in the 21st century youth power. As a young leader at the Apex office on the continent, how do you take care of your mental health? And I think this is very important, Aya, looking at whatever is happening at this period where people are at home, you know, they're just at home. People have a lot of time, have a lot of energy. They're on the internet. In Kenya, we've seen a lot of people being bullied online. At the point where you are in that office, and just trying to link that to this question, how do you handle your mental well-being? Yeah, because it has been a challenge to many young people.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say hi to everyone and thank you all for the messages, and feel free to connect, whether on LinkedIn or on email. For mental health, I have found out about meditation in 2011, and since then I have been practicing it. And so the way I practiced meditation was in a training in Thailand. But
A little bit. Excuse me. I am sorry for that. I think it is counting down. So yeah, sorry for that. We are going to pick it up from where she was talking about the issue of mental health. So we'll just wait for her to be back, and then we get to hear that. If you have any other question for Miss Aya, please just don't hesitate to bring that back up. Yeah. So Miss Aya, getting her conversation so that we know we can proceed from there. I think we had gotten to the maximum limit for a live, because we've been doing this for about an hour now. Just a minute. Just a minute. If you have any question, kindly just bring it back there. I am sorry for that. I think my Instagram just started counting down the remaining time, and then it went off. So we are just going to pick it up from there, where you had started talking about the issue of mental health and how you're handling that.
Okay, so I'll wrap up with this question on mental health. So basically, I have learned how to do meditation, which is my tool to use to keep on sane. But I think meditation is not only in the form of, you know, the very stereotypical yoga pose. Any form of meditation that helps you. So it could be, your meditation could be music, your meditation could be your faith, your meditation could be talking to someone you trust, your meditation could be in any form. So I think first of all, you need to acknowledge if you need help. Please do get help, and find the support system. Basically, your family, I assume, would be the first thing that you should get in touch with if you feel that, you know, you're heavy and there is that mental health issues disturbing you. But I think also you should get the help you need if you feel this is getting to a severe situation. So get a helpline in your country, look for a mental health organization. But also, even if you do not see the a tough time.
Okay, I think I lost you for a bit, like 2 seconds there, but I'm glad you're back.
So I was saying this is a tough time for everyone, and even those who have been practicing different tools of taking care of ourselves, it might be even challenging because you're self-isolating. Some people are in quarantine, you don't see people. If you're social, you don't get in touch with physical connection. That means a lot to you. So I would say always keep positive throughout the day. Have a routine throughout your day. Keep positive. Try to eat healthy. Try to have positive conversations, but also keep that support system around you. So we thank the technology for keeping us in touch with, you know, I call my parents every day who are in Tunisia, but we need to be also aware that there are many people who don't have this privilege and luxury. So those of us who do have it and who can, you know, pick up a phone call and support someone morally.
Yes. I think we lost Aya a little, but she should be back now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, now I can. I
Yeah,
can.
so I was saying that there are people who don't have access to the resources we have to open a YouTube and follow a yoga session or a meditation session or do some exercises, or put up a playlist of music. There are people who don't have access even to a laptop or a phone or to internet. So for those, I think we, the ones who have this privilege, need to pick up the phone and check on our friend and check on our cousin and check on our family, and give them the moral support they need, or give them the help they need, if it's a helpline or if it's a tool that works for us and they can try it. I think the support system in this time and the solidarity is also needed, and knowing that you're not alone and that we're all in this together also helps for all of us to overcome it.
Exactly. And as we wrap up, Miss Aya, Miss Post-Colonial Africa is saying naps are good. Take naps when you can. And then Ife is saying, I'd like to recommend more webinars like this as a way of connecting with African youth across and outside the continent. I think that is something that we can still look into. Ife is also saying this has been really awesome. So thank you guys who've joined in, who've asked questions, who've given comments, those thumbs up. We are really grateful for that, and we are hoping that we can really do more of this together. Let me see if I can read a few more. And then finally, maybe Aya, on the point on youth and development in Africa. We have, or even before that, I really wanted to ask, or just want you to talk about a little about the agenda, the African Union's agenda for 2020, about silencing the gun, and whatever plans that you had for this year. Are they still on course? If you had physical events planned, for instance, are there plans to move those online?
Yeah, so in terms of the activities of my office, we're moving many of them virtually. So now we're thinking how to do the intergenerational dialogue virtually. We're continuing with many of the activities that we planned. We're doing a workshop on governance with youth in public service. So we're continuing with that. But in terms of silencing the guns, I think it's an agenda that we need to continue advocating for. We started our advocacy during the Heads of State Summit, and we try to take out silencing the guns from the Heads of States agenda of just a free conflict Africa, which is literal arms, to also talk about silencing gender-based violence, silencing youth unemployment, silencing corruption, silencing climate crisis, silencing poverty and hunger. So we put 5 themes that we are rallying around young people to connect and relate to the topic, because many countries in Africa who do not have conflict do not relate to the agenda or to the theme, but in many ways the themes speak to them. So we will continue to advocate for it, because obviously many guns are not silenced. I mean, on 25th of March, there was an attack on the Sahel, and so we need to keep on pushing on ceasefire and pushing, using the opportunity of the pandemic to have dialogues and to ask, different people involved in conflict to really sit on the table of dialogue. So I
think we have a break in the line again, but we'll just be patient a little so that we finalize this with a bang, just like we began. So let's just be patient with her a little. I think we are having a connection issue. Miss Aya, you're back.
Yes.
So, okay. Yeah.
So with that, I want to also thank you very much and also applaud you and commend you for this initiative of doing different lives with different youth actors and really amplifying the youth agenda. So keep it up. And to all of us who have been with us, I hope it was useful, and you
Yes.
learned a little bit more about the AU, a little bit more about what we do, and that you're inspired to take action and to join a collective youth response to COVID-19.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Ms. Aya. We hope that you are going to be safe even while you do this. Continue working from home, and we all, everyone who is watching, we hope that you're safe in whatever country that you are in, whether it's within the continent or outside. And also, if you want to participate in such a conversation, just reach to us via DM so that we get a feel of what is happening on your end and what young people are doing. Ms. Aya, we are also doing, we also having conversations with people who are outside the continent, so Africans in diaspora, to get a feel, because there are some who are in the UK, we are trying to get into contact with some in the US so that we know how they are doing. Yesterday we spoke to a colleague, one of us in a Kenyan in Australia, and they have a support system. It's good to hear that they have some form of support system so that they can just work together throughout this period. So one final word for the youth from you, especially during this period and their place in trying to flatten the curve, and also their place in development. That's the last thing I'll ask of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to thank you again for this and for continuing to do it and playing your part. And I love what you're doing with mobile journalism. And for young people out there who've been watching us, stay safe, stay sane, continue to play your part, be part of the solution, stay in solidarity with your peers in your community and on the continent, and know that you're not alone. And if you have access to watch us live, then you have access to many resources that you can use that are at your disposal, who are privilege or you know, a luxury to other people. So let's use also the resources we have in this time to come together in a collective solidaire response as young people, and let's do that for our generation and for the next generations.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll call it a wrap for tonight. Bye bye, Miss Aya.
Bye.
Well, yeah, so guys, these conversations will still go on. If you really wish to be part of this conversation, if you are outside the continent or you are within Africa and you want us to, you want to talk to us about the situation wherever you are. I am, yeah, you're saying that you're trying to contribute as much as you can from New York. I hope you're doing well in New York and keeping safe. We want to hear good stories of people, especially from this continent, who are doing great things from wherever you are. So reach out. We can, again, organize another live so that we have these discussions about how to stay safe and our contribution as the youth in Africa to ending the pandemic. So thank you very much for joining in this evening. Follow us for stories. As Mobile Journalism Africa, we believe that our stories are best told by us, and we are putting ourselves in position where we can be in control of the African narrative. So thank you, and thank you, and thank you.